Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating idea. What if the fundamental unit of human stability isn't the individual, but the network we're in? We're going to break down a theory that explains why amazing teams can suddenly collapse and why being alone can be so incredibly destructive. It's called story collaboration identity theory.
So let me just start with a couple of questions that I bet we've all asked ourselves. Ever seen a team that just clicks, they're amazing for years, and then all of a sudden, they just implode? Or, on a more personal note, why is being truly alone for a long time so exhausting? Not just sad, but physically draining. Well, what if these aren't just random quirks of psychology? What if they're actually predictable system failures? A theory called SIT says, yeah, they absolutely are. To even begin to answer those questions, we have to kind of flip our whole perspective. Story collaboration identity theory, or SITE for short, argues that we've been looking in the wrong place. The fundamental unit of human stability isn't a single person. It's the network that person is connected to.
Okay, so what is this thing at its core? Let's just pull out those key phrases. Obligate social organisms, and stability depends on sustained interaction. Obligate is the key word there. This isn't about us liking to be social, it's that we have to be. The theory basically treats healthy, coherent social connection as a non-negotiable biological need, right up there with food and water. Now, real quick, before we go any further, let's just clear up a common mix-up. You might have heard this called sociochemical theory, but that's not quite right. The name is story collaboration identity theory, and that's important because the core of this whole thing is about shared understanding, the story, and the network structure. It's not about brain chemistry. The chemistry is the result, not the cause. So let's get down to the absolute bedrock of the theory. Everything else we're about to talk about is built on this one single foundational principle about what happens to us when we get cut off. And here it is. They call it Axiom Zero. An isolated human system is asymptotically unstable. I mean, wow, that is a heavy, almost chilling statement. It completely reframes loneliness. It's not just a feeling anymore. It's a predictable, accelerating, and inevitable state of system failure. So what does that fancy phrase, asymptotically unstable, actually mean for a person? Well, it means these three things are going to happen. No way around it. 1, your internal world starts to get chaotic and fragmented. 2, the physical stress on your body, your metabolic load, doesn't just go up. It accelerates. It gets worse faster over time. And 3, eventually this all leads to a predictable system break. Okay, so Axiom Zero tells us we absolutely need connection to survive. But, and this is a huge but, not just any connection will do. The theory builds on this with 4 constraints. You can think of them as 4 pebbles we add to the model, and they explain why some connections make us stronger and others just tear us apart. So let's put down the first pebble. Directionality. This is a simple but powerful idea. It says that social connection is never neutral. It has a direction. It's either reducing the chaos in your system or it's adding to it. And you can see right here why that's so important. Without this idea, you might just think, oh, any social contact is good for me. But once you add the pebble of directionality, you realize nope. Only the connections that actually reduce disorder, the ones that make the world feel more predictable and manageable, are actually helping you. Any connection that adds more noise and chaos, it's actively making things worse. And once you get this, you see it everywhere. You know that one relationship that just leaves you feeling totally drained? It's probably adding disorder. Or, when a team tries to solve a problem by having more and more meetings, but things just get worse? The communication isn't coherent. And it perfectly explains things like trauma bonds. They feel incredibly intense, but they're actually deeply, deeply destabilizing. All right, so a connection has to be helpful, it has to reduce disorder. But what happens when even a good connection gets a little strained? That brings us to our second pebble, finite tolerance. This is just recognizing that, every living thing has its limits. Here's the core of it. You can handle a certain amount of friction. A bit of misalignment in a team or a friendship, we all can. But there's a threshold, a breaking point. And if the misalignment crosses that line for too long, the very same connection that used to stabilize you suddenly flips, and it starts adding to your stress load. And this idea of a threshold, it's the key to understanding all sorts of sudden collapses. You ever wonder why burnout feels like it just hits you like a truck one day? It's because your system was absorbing the stress, absorbing it, until it couldn't anymore. It hit its tolerance limit. It's why a relationship can seem perfectly fine for years and then just suddenly it's over.
The system crossed its threshold. So on to our third pebble. This one's got a kind of technical name, hysteresis. But the idea behind it is something we have all felt very deeply. It's the idea that breaking something and fixing something are not just opposites.
This right here, this is a crucial and honestly a pretty painful truth. We tend to think that fixing a broken relationship should take about as much effort as keeping it healthy. But hysteresis tells us that is completely wrong. Maintenance, doing the little things every day, is cheap energetically. But once that bond breaks, once you cross that tolerance threshold, repair becomes incredibly, disproportionately expensive.
Okay, last pebble. This is the one that takes everything we've been talking about with individuals and pairs, and it scales it all the way up to groups, organizations, and even whole societies. It's called scale coupling. So here's the crucial point. Instability isn't contained. It spreads. Think of it like a contagion. If one individual is under a huge amount of stress, that disorder bleeds out and affects their whole team. And if the whole company is chaotic and fragmented, that raises the stress on every single person in it. The instability just propagates up and down the different scales. So we've built the whole structure with our 4 pebbles. We have the rules of the road. But what is the actual stuff that flows through these connections? What is it that actually syncs people up and brings that disorder down? The theory has a very specific answer. It's story. And when Syed says story, it's not being poetic. It's a technical term. You can see here, a story is a shared, predictive model. It's not just raw information. It's not just a private belief you have. And it's not a narrative like you'd read in a book. A story is the operational tool that lets everyone in a group know, okay, this is what's important, this is what we expect to happen, and this is what we're going to do about it. It's the thing that makes real coordination possible. Okay, we have our foundation, Axiom Zero, we have our 4 rules of connection, the pebbles, and we have the story that allows us to coordinate. So now, let's put it all together and look at the incredible explanatory power of this framework. When you have the whole theory, suddenly, all of these different things that seemed unrelated just click into place. Burnout isn't a personal sailing, it's a physiological system crossing its tolerance threshold. Political polarization is a network-level collapse of a shared story. Why is it so hard to rebuild trust? That's hysteresis right there. A toxic leader destroying an organization. That's scale coupling in action, injecting disorder that spreads everywhere. And things like rituals and norms, they're not just fluff. They are essential, energy-saving protocols that keep the story strong.
And that really brings us to the single biggest takeaway from all of this. It's the core thesis of SCIT, put as plainly as possible. This is not about choosing to be social because it feels good. This is about a fundamental requirement to remain a stable, functional system. We need each other to regulate ourselves and literally hold it all together.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think about the most important group in your life, your family, your team at work, your community. What is the core story that you all share? What is that shared, predictive model that keeps you all aligned and keeps the system from flying apart? Because understanding that story, that's the first step to protecting it.